From the Times and the Sunday Times, this is The Story. I'm Manveen Rana. America is no stranger to political assassinations. From Abraham Lincoln to John F. Kennedy, 4 American presidents have been killed while in office, and 6 more have been shot at. The last was 43 years ago, when a gunman took aim at Ronald Reagan.
Began as the scene as the president emerged from the Washington Hilton Hotel.
Now, at a time when America has rarely seemed so divided, it's happened again. On Saturday, in Butler, Pennsylvania, America was rocked by another attempt to assassinate an American president.
And if you want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
A spectator was killed, 2 more were critically injured, and the would-be assassin was shot dead. Amid the chaos, Donald Trump, with his face bloodied and a defiant fist in the air, rewrote the narrative of this presidential election. Our reporter was there at the rally as it happened, and he stayed up to speak to us afterwards for this emergency episode.
There's chaos all around you. One woman ran past me who was hysterical. She was maybe in her 60s with dyed blonde hair, and she was shouting at really anyone and nobody, "I'm sick of this country. I'm sick of all this shit. It has to stop. It has to stop."
The story today: Trump is shot. Hi, thanks for joining us. What time is it where you are?
I have barely any understanding of time anymore. It's 20 past 8 in the morning.
And you probably haven't slept.
I haven't slept, no.
Good God. Well, thanks so much for doing this. What a day.
Don't worry.
Tom Newton Dunn is a broadcaster and political journalist, and when we speak on Sunday, it's already been 24 hours since he started his working day.
I'm currently on a 2-week assignment in the United States for the Times to cover where we've got to in the US presidential election contest.
And where exactly are you now?
So right now I'm in Pittsburgh at an airport hotel in Pittsburgh, waiting for a flight I'm going to miss, having spent all of yesterday up in Butler. We would have come back from Butler a bit earlier, but obviously after the shooting, the town got closed down on lockdown, and it took us until midnight to come back. Butler's about 40 miles north of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a big Democrat city. Butler is a pretty Republican place. Pretty rural. It's where people go to have a nicer life from Pittsburgh, I'm told.
Well, Tom, it's been a hell of a 24 hours for you. Just take us back. Describe what it was like when you arrived at this rally. What was the atmosphere like?
It was fun. It was a carnival. It was a celebration. Trump rallies are unlike any political events I've ever covered. They're pretty extraordinary. They're full of people who adore Donald Trump, obviously. But it's a jamboree. They all wear T-shirts with all sorts of manners of slogans, some repeatable, some unrepeatable, and they're there to celebrate their guy and their movement, really. The Trump movement is almost more of a cultural zeitgeist for them than it is really a political party. And it was a beautiful summer's July afternoon. It was incredibly hot. It was 35 degrees centigrade. Donald Trump made them wait a long time, but boy, were they ready to wait for him.
And just describe the sort of people who you were talking to, the people around you, and the sort of excitement building up as they're waiting for him to arrive.
They had come from many, many miles away. Some had come from across the state border from Ohio, which is the next door state, not too far away actually from where we are in West Pennsylvania. Some come from Idaho. I met one lady who'd come from Florida, although I think she was visiting her uncle anyway. So it's a big deal. Donald Trump rallies are a thing. If you like the guy or not, there's something to experience. But if you do like the guy, then they're quite extraordinary. I mean, it's akin to, I guess, evangelical preacher moments. These are believers who absolutely love the guy they're listening to and would give everything to him, really.
I voted Democrat all my life until Trump came along.
There you go. There's the guy.
All right? And I haven't voted for a Democrat since then because they changed. Their game changed. This world's on fire right now, and Trump is the fire extinguisher.
So this is going to be the first time you vote?
Yes.
And can I hazard a guess who it's for?
Donald Trump.
And why are you voting Trump?
He approves of America. That's all I can say.
And what is it you like about Trump?
He's honest. He helps the country. He's for the people.
So it's almost a religious fervour in the air. And then he arrives. Describe that.
So he was late. He's always late. He was due on stage at about 5 p.m. The stage, it wasn't a traditional rally. It was a pretty much purpose-built thing in the middle of an old farm showground, really. It was an old runway strip, actually, Butler's old airport, long since deceased, but it was now a farm showground, really, where people would buy and sell cattle. And the Trump stage was set up around a load of seating in a makeshift auditorium. Donald Trump arrived an hour late. His motorcade swept in round the back, but obviously people saw it pretty quickly. The dust cloud and the sort of Pennsylvania back roads whipped up pretty fast. So there was a buzz. There was the normal razzmatazz of, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 45th President of the United States and the 47th President-to-be. And they played the new normal song. You probably heard it 100 times of God Bless the USA. And on stage, Trump walked. There was no warm-up act, actually. It was just him. I think that's the way he liked it. And there he was, to huge applause, to huge cheers, and to his adoring faithful.
And Tom, just describe the moment when you realised that something had gone wrong.
Well, Trump was on stage about 6:05. Around 6:10, he'd only really just begun his act, and he was talking about illegal immigration at the time, and making a particular point he was quite keen to make, and leant forward on his lectern.
That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that said...
At that very moment of leaning forward, and maybe that was the precise action that saved his life, cracks rang out.
Take a look at what happened.
Followed by a 2-second or so pause, and then several more cracks. And we've later learned that was the Secret Service returning fire from sniper positions on top of the barn behind Trump's stage where Trump was. At the time, no one was expecting this. It was this carnival atmosphere, remember? So, they were having fun and they were listening to their guy. And it took really several seconds, I think, for any of us to realize what on earth was happening. I thought it could have been a stunt. I thought it could have been firecrackers. Obviously, I thought it could have been gunfire, but I didn't think that would really be happening there on that sunny afternoon in West Pennsylvania, where people seemed to be having so much fun. Trump went down. He went down himself, and the Secret Service then piled on top of him. And it was really only when someone in the crowd, quite nearby, who seemed to know what he was talking about, shouted at us all very urgently, "Get down, get down." So we did, and I think that was the moment where we all realised this was really quite serious. This was gunfire, and there were quite clearly people hurt up there on stage behind Donald Trump, and we could see that as well. We leapt to the floor.
Now, move this way!
What could you see of Donald Trump?
Well, we're on the ground at this stage. We're ducking down. I'm still trying to keep half an eye on the stage. 2, 3, maybe 5 seconds later, it becomes obvious, really, that the immediate danger has passed. The shots have stopped. There's no more firing. The threat appears to have been stopped or now, as we know, taken out. So We gradually got back to our feet. Quite a few of us, others stayed lying on the ground. There was a woman next to me crouched on all fours, repeating time and time again, "Oh God, oh God, oh Christ, they've got him, they've got him." But a lot of us wanted to see what had happened to Donald Trump. So we got to our feet, we looked over back at the stage. The stage is probably 50 meters from me, and he was still down. And the Secret Service were all over him. There were then uniformed Secret Service agents with machine guns on the stage pointing out at the crowd. They obviously didn't know where the shooter was at that stage either. And we waited. We waited for what felt like quite a long time, maybe it was only a minute or so, to see what had happened to Donald Trump and whether he'd been hit. And eventually, the Secret Service pulled him to his feet and did their usual job of trying to bundle him off the stage and out as fast as possible.
Move to spare. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Ready. Move. Move. Go.
But he didn't want to go. You've seen that on the TV pictures. He was adamant that I think the audio picked up he wanted to put his shoes back on.
Let me get my shoes on.
He wanted to signal to the crowd that he was okay. So he gave that fisted salute. That raised fist, I think, was the signal that the crowd wanted. That he was okay, or he was going to be okay. He certainly wasn't fatally wounded. And a huge cheer of relief then went up from the crowd, and they were delighted to see that.
He managed to chant, "Fight, fight, fight." And pictures of that moment are already becoming iconic. Just tell us, what do we now know about the shooter, about the man behind this?
Well, very late last night, the FBI identified the suspect as one Thomas Matthew Crooks. He's 20 years old. He's actually from a suburb of Pittsburgh, the city I'm in now, south of Pittsburgh, called Bethel Park. Bethel Park is maybe an hour's drive up to Butler, where the rally was. And we know very little more about him. There's been a lot of conjecture whether he's a left-winger, more conjecture that he's a right-winger. He's was certainly part of Trump's movement. We'll certainly find out a lot more about him in the days to come, but at the moment the details are still sketchy.
Yeah, we're told he was a member of the Republicans, but had also in the past donated to the Democrats, so it's all very much up in the air and feels like there's lots of conspiracies already forming. People in the crowd described seeing him before the shooting. I mean, are there questions being asked about the Secret Service?
I think there are, and I think these questions are really quite serious, quite valued as well, to be honest, because he was seen on the roof. Some were seen on the roof. Some people started to get quite agitated by this, but for not very long. It was a matter of seconds, really, before he opened fire. I think he was spotted. Seconds later, he was shot dead, shot in the head by the Secret Service. But, he was up there. He was very visible to anyone who wanted to look.
We noticed a guy crawling, bear crawling up the roof of the building beside us, 50 feet away from us. So we're standing there, we're pointing at the guy crawling up the roof. He had a rifle. We're pointing at him. The police are down there running around on the ground. We're like, "Hey man, there's a guy on the roof with a rifle." And the police were like, "Huh, what?" Like they didn't know what was going on. We're like, "Hey, right here on the roof. We can see him from right here."
And the place where he was a warehouse. It's actually owned. I went to have a look at it after the rally was closed down and got as close as I could. It's American. It's a glass factory, and it's a complex of 3 or 4 little warehouses, sort of sandy coloured with white roofs, and they're maybe 20 feet high each of them. He was lying on the warehouse closest to the ground where the rally was, maybe 150 yards, not much more from the stage itself. And he was in an elevated position. He was, at height and had, as we obviously know now, a very direct, clean sight onto the stage and onto Donald Trump, the former president and the presidential candidate. And this is a major failing by the Secret Service. So there's no other way to put that, really, because this is an obvious spot and a clear threat. For me, and I've seen prime ministers and presidents over the years and gone to quite a few of these events, these sorts of places, these sorts of threat points are always occupied by police. 1 or 2 police, it doesn't take many, but they deprive anyone who wants to do something like this of that space and opportunity to do so. And it's very strange indeed that rooftop wasn't manned There were snipers behind Donald Trump on the roof behind of the stage, as we've discussed. They were scanning with their binoculars throughout, but they didn't see him. They certainly didn't see him in time. It suggests he wasn't on the roof for very long, but certainly he was on there for long enough to do something, and for the Secret Service to have missed him as well from their two different sniper positions from behind the stage.
Tom, since that moment, there's been a huge reaction around the world. But just take me back to where you were. You'd been on the ground, people around you were panicking. What was the reaction at the rally to what had happened?
It was strange, and it's hard even to think back my own reactions, really. In films and dramatic portrayals of these sorts of events, everything is very clear. You know what's happening at all times, and you can form very quick judgments as you're watching the movie of how you should feel about these sort of dramatic events. But when you're at these sort of places, it's pandemonium. You don't know what's happening. I was a defense correspondent years ago, and it's akin to sort of trying to cover a war, really. There's chaos all around you. All you can see is what's in front of you. You don't know the truth, and you've just got the clues your eyeballs are giving you. So it was very hard to form a firm judgment on what exactly had happened. And I guess all of us were forming multiple judgments on the various different options that could have happened. Some people, some older women, were very, very upset indeed. Other women, their children were in tears. They were in tears, desperately pulling them by the hand, trying to get them out of there and away from the danger. There were some men who were equally upset. Some men were angry, some young men were very angry. One young man in particular was very upset and very angry and shouted at me, "This is Biden, this is CNN, they've paid for this."
This is paid for by CNN and Joe Biden and the Democrats.
Obviously, outlandish claims and unsubstantiated. But I think there was the full gamut, really, of reactions: anger, shock, hurt, upset, and hysteria, all playing out really in front of us, and everyone was reacting their own different way. I think as time went on, half an hour passed, an hour passed, and what had happened, the sadness of it, I think we heard within half an hour or so that a spectator had been killed. One of the Trump supporters' one of their own people, they may have known them or not. And the mood then moved from hysteria, upset, and anger to sadness, really. I mean, this was supposed to be a happy day. This was not supposed to happen. This was not supposed to happen to these people at their place in their local hometown. Whatever you think of Donald Trump, whatever you think of his politics and his policies, and however responsible you think he is for this sort of worsening situation in the US, it was a horrific thing to happen. And it's quite difficult to talk about it, actually, when you think back about it. Maybe it's the sleep deprivation that's now kicking in.
No, it's a hell of a thing to live through, and people did die, which I think, very easily gets forgotten in a lot of the rhetoric around this. Just talk us through what happened to Trump next. We know he was flown off, and his team have put out statements, and he's spoken since. What have they been saying? Yeah,
Donald Trump's reaction, I think, has been really interesting here, because the world saw that clenched fist immediately. I think that's the sort of reaction they would have expected of Donald Trump. But what little I saw of Donald Trump on that stage was an extremely flustered man who had barely some idea of what had happened and was just reacting the only way he knew how, which was defiance. The statement he then put out some hours later, around 11 o'clock last night US time, was a lot more measured. There was no blame. There was no anger, really. There was a lot of sadness, and there was a lot of sympathy for the person who'd been killed and their families too.
This is from Donald Trump's account. I want to thank the United States Secret Service and all of law enforcement for their rapid response in the shooting that just took place in Butler, Pennsylvania. Most importantly, I want to extend my condolences to the family of the person at the rally who was killed, and also to the family of another person that was badly injured. It is incredible that such an
It felt like
in our country.
a more mature Donald Trump. He'd just taken a phone call from Joe Biden. Joe Biden had called him Donald in his press statement, which is something I don't think I've ever heard Joe Biden do before. And, it appeared these two men, are clearly feeling the need not to pile on the bar on what is a very, very sensitive time in America. This place is a tinderbox already. And I think both men, certainly today, are realizing that these are not flames that need to be stirred in any way whatsoever. So Donald Trump was almost assassinated. He came an inch away from death. That bullet was an inch further to the right, and it would have gone into his skull and through the back of his brain, and he would have been dead before he hit the ground. So, this will be a sobering event for him, and I think he's reacting in a moderate way at the moment.
And we know that there has been this phone call with Biden. What has his reaction been?
Joe Biden, I think for me, got exactly the right tone last night. It was presidential, and for that moment, for that night, and maybe for a few days to come now, politics was out the window. He was talking like a president. He was sounding like a president, trying to bring people together, trying to bring that man called Donald together with him.
There's no place in America for this kind of violence. It's sick. It's sick. It's one of the reasons why we have to unite this country. We cannot allow for this to be happening. We cannot be like this. We cannot condone this. The bottom line is that the Trump rally was a rally that he should have been able to be conducted peacefully without any problem. But the idea that there's political violence or violence in America like this is just unheard of. It's just not appropriate. And everybody must condemn it. Everybody. I'll keep you informed, and if I am able to speak to Donald, I'll let you know that as well. But so far, it appears he's doing well.
Joe Biden is himself in dire straits. This was the weekend he was supposed to be going home to Wilmington to meet with his family and decide whether he was going to stay in the race or not after all the trouble he's been through. Now you've got the other candidate, Donald Trump, almost assassinated, going through a very, very difficult sort of turmoil as well. But if ever there was a moment to pause and reflect, it is absolutely this for both men, and that does certainly appear to be what they're doing right now.
What about their parties, though? I mean, what's the Republican reaction been? You described how some people at the rally were instantly blaming Biden and CNN. How have the Republicans reacted to this?
Again, mixed. Some very, very angry people, not just the rally, but also some quite senior people in the Republican Party taking to Twitter. I mean, to be honest, people you think really should know better. J.D. Vance, the newly elected senator from Ohio, real rising star in the Republican Party, and the front runner to be Donald Trump's pick. I mean, it's funny to recall, but only a few minutes before the rally started, I was getting messages from fellow Times reporters, Times News saying, look, big moment coming up. We think he might announce his VP pick at the rally. We think he might announce J.D. Vance. So that's the big news we were all primed for. So J.D. Vance popped up on Twitter within an hour of the shooting last night to make some pretty inflammatory remarks. He blamed squarely the Democrats for what had happened, for demonizing Donald Trump, for calling him an authoritarian fascist who must be stopped at all costs, in his words. And he said, and I quote him, that rhetoric led directly to President Trump's attempted assassination. I have to say that is not the tone a lot of other very senior Republicans are taking now. It's also not the tone J.D. Vance is taking. So for now, there does certainly appear to be wise heads are prevailing. But there will be some very, very angry people in the US. I'm talking to you at the moment, early in the morning. It's only 8:45 in the morning. And a lot of America will be very, very shocked indeed by what they saw last night. And a lot of Trump supporters who have been told by Donald Trump and others for some time now that Joe Biden and the Democrats are trying to close down their country as they know it and end their country and their existence as they know it. And they may well be tempted to fight. And I think there is a real worry now that some people might do the wrong thing, decide that they need to take their own vengeance, and there could be some quite ugly scenes on U.S. streets. We all hope that's not the case, and we really hope that Joe Biden and Donald Trump's words of caution and wisdom now and an attempt to heal might stop some of those worst case scenario. But it's a tinderbox, and I think we'll have to wait for the next few days to play out to see which way this one goes.
How much do you think this will affect the election now?
It's hard to see that I mean, look, this is a question we can't ignore because there is going to be an election in a few months' time in November. There has to be a winner, and life goes on, politics goes on, and elections go on. We should see what happens over the next few days. We should see what tone, what line that Biden and Trump continue to take. I think both men know this is a moment of maximum risk for them as well. If they get this one wrong, they call this one wrong, it could sink either of their campaigns, quite frankly. But I spoke briefly to Frank Luntz last night, the US pollster, veteran pollster. His take, which I can only but bow to, is this will clearly give Trump a boost in the short term. There'll be a lot of sympathy for Trump, for people who may not like his politics or maybe on the fence, may want to support Trump now because they think that is a way to defy violence and extremism and terror of the likes we all had to witness last night in Butler.
There's already merchandise on sale, I think, saying fight, 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 which is what Trump said.
Yeah, and, I think there's two different ways of interpreting that statement, quite frankly. And, I think we have to hope that, he means fight violence rather than fight back with violence. But Frank Luntz certainly expects to see a short-term pickup for Trump. He doesn't expect that to last forever. Eventually, this event will recede into certainly the near history. It will take some weeks, maybe some months, but eventually support that Trump picked up immediately may drift back. But he does also think that the one thing that will happen is that every Trump voter, every voter who was minded to vote for Trump will now go out and vote for Trump. This will be a big, big motivator in turnout, which is crucial for every single election, ours and theirs. So you can see a very, very motivated Trump vote indeed. That will not help the Democrats, especially if Joe Biden's still in charge, because their voters are not motivated, least of all by Joe Biden. So you can see this giving Trump some form of advantage as we go into November. Frank Luntz reckons it's maybe a point or two. Now, crucially, in a state like Pennsylvania, where I obviously am and where Butler is, that really matters. Pennsylvania is not just one of the 6 key swing states, it is the key swing state. It has 19 electoral college votes. It is the big one. Biden cannot keep in the White House unless he wins Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan, but definitely Pennsylvania. Trump will probably struggle to get the White House unless he wins Pennsylvania. So it's not just the effect it'll have on the Trump vote, it's on this particular state. And a lot of Pennsylvania Trump supporters now undoubtedly will be adamant they're going to the polls and they're going to vote for their guy. So it shifts the dial towards Trump, undoubtedly, not overwhelmingly, but definitely this can only but help his prospects.
Do you think it'll quieten the debate on the Democrat side about replacing Biden? I mean, I imagine a lot of the people who were lining up to do that might be reluctant now.
I think there'll be a pause. I think it's not the right time to get back to politics as usual, which got pretty bitter and pretty feuding last week. And that was just in the Democrat camp. The pro and anti-Biden supporters at each other's throats in a most extraordinary way. I think it will certainly be a moment. I think it may give actually all parties, certainly the Biden party and maybe Biden's family and his close associates, some time to think a bit more clearly now and to put things into perspective. But Joe Biden's a stubborn guy. He's made that clear so far, and he may take the view that he's the only guy that can really try to unite an even more bitter and angry and divided country than it was even yesterday. And it was pretty divided then. I think we just have to wait and see. I think this is one of those events, the likes of which don't happen very often, once a decade, once every 2 or 3 decades, that a lot changes after. It can't but. Life in America, politics in America, it will continue, but it will subtly change. Maybe a lot, maybe a little, but things will always be different after this event because, lethal violence is back. And the days of the Kennedy's assassinations, the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, we thought those days are gone, but they're not. They're back, and that will change subtly a lot, the way people talk to each other and the way they think about things.
That's almost encouraging. I mean, Tom, you're there. We see America being incredibly polarized at the moment. As you mentioned, it has a history of political assassinations. Is there a chance that this will make the political discourse better, politer, kinder, or, is this almost a trigger to something akin to a civil war?
Do we don't know the answer to that. I mean, I think both of those options are entirely possible. All we've really got to go on, where are we now, the last 14 hours, since the shooting. And in those 14 hours, apart from the J.D. Vances of this world and some very angry people that I met last night, the reaction has been reasonable. It has been a moment for people to stop and think and to realize, especially those leaders, the Bidens and definitely Trump of all, he holds in his hands immense power now, immense power to do incredible damage. If he repeated January the 6th tonight and said, vengeance will be ours, Proud Boys, I need you, stand up now, let's take the fight back to those people who try to kill me, then you could have civil war and blood on the streets tomorrow morning. It could be really ugly. It doesn't, however, look like he's going to do that. Let's see, though. Let's see how long Donald Trump can moderate himself. I mean, I think it's electorally in his interest to do so, and he's been quite restrained, actually. You saw that from the debate onwards. He can moderate himself when he knows there's a lot of votes in it. So, I think we've got to be positive about this. But I could not rule out a pretty horrendous situation also occurring over the days and weeks ahead. It's going to be a very stressful, a very tense time in American politics, as the world will be looking on, obviously, at the same time.
That was Tom Newton Dunn, who was there on a historic day in Butler, Pennsylvania. I'm hoping he'll get some sleep now. You can find all of Tom's reporting from that rally and our continuing coverage of both the election and how this shooting plays out with the public and the political campaigns across America at thetimes.com, with regular rolling updates on Times Radio. The producers today on this emergency episode were Will Rowe and Chris Wade. The executive producer was Kate Ford, and sound design was by James Shield. If you're glad you heard this episode, this little slice of history, then please do pass it on to anyone who you think should hear it, or leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back, as usual, tomorrow. See you then.